Hello and welcome to Move or Improve. I'm Debbie Miller, your host, and we're going to talk today about something that, well, I've done it for years, but it's not like it's on HGTV. Forget it. You need to think about buying a fixer-upper, pros and cons, and that's what I'm going to talk about. What should you look for in a fixer-upper, and should you even consider buying one? It's not a project for the novice, nor is it for the faint of heart. And it will take longer than the shows on HGTV that make it look so easy. Ask yourself these questions to help you decide whether you should jump into the pool or stay on the deck and watch. Do you plan on reselling quickly, or are you going to live in it yourself? That's the first thing. Well, what is a fixer-upper? Well, I like to describe a fixer-upper as the property that nobody wants right now, but will want in the future. As we say in real estate, location, location, location. Property near a busy highway or near an industrial complex isn't a good buy, obviously. This is probably the most important factor when you purchase any real estate, really, is location. The second is the resale value. Buying a property in an established neighborhood that's convenient to shopping and restaurants and grocery is important. You want to look for one preferably that's in an owner-occupied neighborhood. This property will appeal to a wider audience of buyers when it's time to sell. And if you're going to live there, it's nice to have that location as well. So what is the interior square footage? That's something to consider. You want a minimum of 3 bedrooms and 2 baths in a single family home. That's a good place to start. More bedrooms are obviously a plus. And when you're looking, what is the layout like? You don't want to have to move or tear out walls to open up the space necessarily unless it's an easy thing to do. The ideal home to fix up will only need cosmetic updates, not major structural changes. Ideally, you want your repairs to be interior and exterior painting, new carpet or refinishing the existing flooring, resurfacing or painting kitchen cabinets and installing new hardware and installing new countertops and new appliances. That's always a plus. And update the lighting inside and out and tidy up the yard. Make it look attractive with some mulch down if you have grass. Plant some flowers at the entryway, that sort of thing. Bathrooms could have a simple change like replacing an outdated sink with a new one. The buyers prefer the cabinets with the taller sinks now, the taller cabinets, and replace the toilet. That's a fairly simple thing to do. New faucets on the sink and in the tub or shower will definitely improve the looks, and they're not terribly expensive. Now, if other homes in the neighborhood have decks, then just consider building a basic deck because it will add to the resale value. Remodeling Magazine publishes its chart showing the cost versus the value. This is done yearly, and they take different sections of the country and show you if you put $10,000 into an improvement, what can you expect to get back? And it's a pretty good indication of what your value is going to be. And it shows you, for example, how much will you get back if you replace a garage door or you install new siding. Based on the amount that you pay. So if you pay $10,000, will you get $5,000 back or will you get 80% back? That will tell you a lot. Buyers are looking for something that they can move into right away. So if you're going to flip it, they don't want to work on anything. They have their own life to live and they expect you to have done your work. Of course, you'll do separate, different types of home inspections before you purchase the property so you can decide whether to move forward on it based on what you find as a result of the inspections. You want to avoid putting an offer in on a property where the seller won't allow inspections. That's a big red flag. Avoid having to replace all the windows. You don't want to have to do that. A cracked pane of glass is cheap to do. That's not a problem. But all the windows, that's a real challenge. And then you want to determine whether you can accomplish creating the open space that you want without having to move the walls. Look for ones where look for properties where you have the right to inspect and void the contract if it looks like it's going to be more work than your budget can handle. And when you inspect, you want to call in inspectors to look at the chimney, the roof, the overall house, including the HVAC, electrical, plumbing. And you're going to want to look for wood-destroying insect damage that may have caused structural issues. And lead-based paint inspections on home built prior to 1978 may also be needed. Depends on the extent of the paint that's been used. Other biggies include a leak in the sewer line. That's a big expensive one. Or a faulty septic system, or a buried oil tank, or a well that needs to be redug. Those are all high-ticket items. And foundation issues are also a big red flag. All of these will add substantially to your budget, so if you can avoid them, it's better to pay an inspection fee up front and find out that there's a problem rather than get yourself in there and then find out, it was a problem and I didn't know about it. So if the property passes these inspections and you can handle what you find, then you want to set your budget. You want to determine how much can you do on your own and how much do you want to farm out to a qualified licensed contractor. You'll make a master list of all the repairs that need doing and the cost to do so. And I can guarantee that the repairs will rarely cost less than what you budgeted. I think you should add at least 20% to cover the cost overruns, especially if you're upgrading electrical or installing a new HVAC system. And there's also the possibility of radon, mold, and asbestos. I mean, chances are you're probably buying an older home, so you want to check for that, especially if the house has been vacant for a while. And you're going to need to budget for your property taxes, homeowners insurance, and utilities while you're working on the property. These kick in as soon as you sign the papers to make you the new owner. Permits to do certain tasks will have to be included as well. And don't skip the permit process. It will bite you in the end when you go to sell because the buyer will want to see that you've done the work properly. Another part of your analysis should include a detailed evaluation of what the house might sell for once the improvements are done. What are fixed up properties in the area going for? So if you can get a house for $300,000, but houses in the neighborhood are selling for $500,000, $600,000, then that's a good deal because you can put $100,000 into it and still pocket some profit. What improvements have been made in those properties as well, because that's going to give you a good indication if they've sold recently, how much did they go for and what attracted buyers to that property. Are those improvements features that you should include in your renovation as well? And you're going to want to talk with a realtor who knows that area and can provide comparables on what has sold there in the past 3 to 6 months or so. That will give you a good indication. And you want to also determine what the prices were the year before, so you know whether the area is getting better, staying the same, or is in a slump. In some areas, inventory is low and properties often get multiple offers. Don't expect that to happen, but boy, can you be happy if yours does get multiples. You'll be buying the property at a significantly lower price than the market value because the seller doesn't want to or can't afford to make the improvements to get top dollar. Once you know what the neighborhood properties are going for and you've figured out your costs, you can subtract those costs from the fixed up properties and buffer it a little bit more so you can show a profit when you sell. Unless you're paying cash, you need to figure out your costs to finance the property and to resell it on the open market. And there are lenders who specialize in financing using a loan called a 203K. Going to a traditional lender for financing may not work if the house is in desperate need. There's a particular loan the Federal Housing Administration offers called the 203K loan, and that provides you with the money you need to make your repairs. You need a great credit score, and the market has to meet FHA mortgage limits for that area. So that is a good thing to, and I did a podcast recently on getting the full details on how that loan works. It was on September 19th podcast of last year, and I think you should reach out and listen to it. Paul Denman of First Heritage Mortgage was my guest. He can be reached at pdenman@fhmtg.com. He specializes in those types of loans, and he can answer your questions in much more detail than I have time for here. But again, that's Paul Denman, Denmon, of First Heritage Mortgage. So the pros of buying a fixer-upper, well, the price is going to be lower than others in the area. Your monthly payments will be lower, even though you need more to make the improvements on the property. And the list price and the down payment and monthly costs are lower, so that's a plus. And there are specific loans for fixer-uppers. And as I said, you want to listen to Paul Denman at First Heritage Mortgage on my September 19 podcast of last year to get the full information on that. The other nice thing about buying a fixer-upper is you can decide what order to make the repairs. Is the kitchen at the top of the list to complete first? You can live with the bathroom for the short term while you get the kitchen looking good. I mean, let's face it, you can't be in all the rooms at the same time. You don't want to do that. So you pick what you want to do. For example, the kitchen, you have to order cabinets if you're replacing them. Well, that can take 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. So you can be working on something else, or you can go ahead and order them ahead of time. Instead of making do with another property, you can find a property that has what I call good bones and fix it up to be your permanent residence instead of reselling it. And you have the fun of making everything new in it, and you put in what you want, as long as your tastes remain neutral, so that if you ever did have to resell it, you could do so easily. And another reason, another pro of fixer-upper, there's not as wide an audience of buyers for fixer-uppers, so you will be competing against other investors and contractors for the property. Yeah, that's true. But if you intend to live in it and make it your own, then let the seller know that you love the certain features about it that they may have enjoyed when they first bought it. Especially if it's a long-time owner, they may appreciate your comments and choose you over an investor who wants to tear out their rose garden and build a new house in place of theirs. It's an emotional decision for them, and you can take advantage of it without being nasty. Another good thing about fixer-uppers, if the property is a good buy, you can determine how much you want to do yourself versus farming it out to contractors who specialize in that task. For example, I had a client once who was sure he could refinish the wood floors himself. Well, within a few hours, he had damaged the wood enough that he had to stop and hire my flooring contractor, who repaired the damage and made the floors beautiful. So, doing hardwood floors is not easy. You have to have a steady hand, and it requires somebody who knows what they're doing. So be careful what you decide you're going to do. Now, the negatives of buying a fixer-upper, yeah, there are negatives. And one of them is that many first-time fixer-upper investors have no idea what's involved in actually doing the work. There's inconvenience with dust, tools out, noise, unseen damage, and more. After all, it is a construction zone. If you're working outside the home during the day, you're working on the projects in the evenings and weekends, that adds to the stress. Waiting for a delivery and hoping that what was delivered wasn't the wrong thing or damaged can add to the stress. And if you have to send it back and wait for another shipment, what's the cost to that? The cheaper the property, the more likely it is that you will spend more than you think. Another negative, is determining a budget is trickier than you think. If this is your first experience with it, you may have forgotten to budget for extra labor, changing the quality of the materials.